Alright guys, welcome back. If you've watched any of my videos, you know I've fixed a lot of these this year. I think I've made maybe 4 or 5 videos on it. I've probably fixed 10 or 12 at this point. I lost track. This generator on first appearance seemed like a good deal. It was advertised as a working generator, starts and runs, makes power, yada yada yada. 200 bucks. That's a good deal for a working generator like this with a Subaru engine. Of course, that wasn't really what was being sold here. Turns out it starts and runs only on starter fluid. And, normally I'd probably talk them down a little bit less than 200 if it's just a carb issue. And in this case too, the generator was stored outside, so it probably has some water issues, rust issues, sun fading, the paint issues. So it's going to be a less desirable generator just because it doesn't look new. So even if it was working 100%, looking the way it does, it's not going to fetch top dollar for sure. Probably 300, 350, that's about it. So that's really all I can hope to make on this. When inspecting it, when I went to pick it up, I noticed something right away that is a deal breaker, which makes this generator, to most people, probably worthless. The carburetor issue is one thing. I have extra carbs. This one might be able to be rebuilt. Usually they are. But on closer inspection, I took a look at the fuel tank, and that rust on the cap is kind of a dead giveaway that there's something going on. And I shined a light down there. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but the bottom of the tank is completely covered in rust. So, there's ways to clean these out, with acid and put a new coating on it, but all that's going to take a lot of time and money. And, or you could buy a new one, but they're actually not available. They're not sold anymore, and they're usually quite expensive. I think around 150 bucks just for the fuel tank. And, if you don't have a fuel tank and it was available, you could spend 150 bucks, but now you're looking at a $350 generator to get it working again. Plus, if the carb looks like what that fuel tank looks like, it probably won't clean up, and that's another 100 bucks for a carb. So now we're at what, 200 plus 150, so that's 350 plus a carb, that's 450. You'll never get your money back on this. So why did I pay 200 bucks? Well, it was an older gentleman selling it. He was 71 years old. I felt bad for him. He clearly was in poor health and seemed like he really needed the money. I think he was having some financial trouble. And, I posted a video a few weeks back where I got 2 of these for 70 bucks each. One of them could not be fixed because of a bad stator, and I have all those parts. So I have a fuel tank for this at no additional cost to me. Now, this is a Husky fuel tank, and the Homelite has a different tank. It's a metal tank, ventless. This one's plastic with a vented fuel cap, but I think it's a direct bolt-on perfect fit. So I'm going to test that, make sure that's the case, and also check if the stator and the rotor test good. Because it would only run for a few seconds, it wouldn't run long enough for me to actually test that it makes power. So I really don't want to pull everything off, fix everything up, and find out it has no power, which has happened before. So with that said, I think it will make power because he bought this generator after a long blackout and kept it ready for use for the next blackout. And he lives in a senior community, and everyone's packed in tight. As soon as he started it up, people complained. He shut it off like within 30 minutes, so he says, and that was pretty much the only time it's been run. So I think the stator and rotor should be fine. I did hear the engine run on starter fluid. It sounded fine. You know, it is weathered, but I have almost an entire generator in parts, one of these generators. So anything that looks too weathered, I can just swap out. So let's get started. So the Husky tank is a perfect fit. All the holes line up, so this will bolt right on. So that's what's in the tank. There's very little fuel flow. I'm sure that fuel outlet is completely clogged with this junk. Might be a little more challenging than I thought to get the fuel out and then recycled. There's probably a gallon in there, unfortunately. So I'm gonna work on taking that out now so that I can move on to something else. Okay, so I just removed the end plate to perform the testing. One thing I noticed, well, two things. There's a lot of dirt in there. Concerns me a little bit because there's a very small clearance between the armature and the stator. So you get a little dust in there and it, you know, starts rubbing on things. So I already brushed out a lot of what I could. I also took a look at the, I don't know if you can see that, took a look at the stator itself, and I mean the color of the wires is perfect. Brand new, definitely not overheated at all. So I'm just going to hook up the meter now and see what I get for a reading. So in order to do this, I need to set this on ohms. And, you know, to do it correctly, you should test it down here. You actually should remove the wires going to the outlets and test, sorry, these are the wires going to the outlets that go up this cord. You should remove those and then just test it on the terminals directly. But one way to cheat is to just test it in the receptacles. You're not going to get as accurate as a reading because it's going through circuit breakers and junctions and blah, blah, blah. But that's fine. I'm just looking to see that there's not an open circuit. And generally the readings are around 0.2 to 0.4. 0.4, 0.3, that's good. I'm going to check the other winding, which is over here. 0.3, 0.2, so that's even better. Now to test the armature or the rotor, you do need to pull the wires off the brushes to get an accurate reading. I mean, actually you should take the brushes completely off and test it right on the slip ring, but in order to get to the slip ring, you really have to remove a lot of the stuff that's in the way in order to get the leads in there. So for this test, I'm going to do it through the brushes, which will give a slightly inaccurate reading. But again, I'm just looking to see ballpark. These usually test at around 65 ohms when you do it on the slip rings directly. Going through the brushes, it will be higher, but it shouldn't be a lot higher, you know, maybe 100, somewhere around there. Really, I'm just looking again to see that the brushes are making contact to the slip ring and that there's a complete circuit going through the rotor. So in order to do that, you got to pull these two wires off, and kind of hard to get to, so you might actually have to cut the zip tie, move some wires out of the way. The red usually goes on the left on these, and the black goes on the right. All right, so it's actually, it's too hard to hold these on the brush connectors and hold the camera. So what I like to do is use these alligator clips and just put them on the terminals where the wires were just pulled off of. And then I can come down here and just connect them right to the meter. So you can see the reading. Again, I would expect like 65, maybe 70 when going direct to the slip rings, and through the brushes it will be higher. So 92 is good. There's connectivity, pretty good connectivity. So I'm just gonna plug everything back in, put this cover back on, and then we'll proceed with the carburetor. Okay, so it looks like someone's been into this carb. The way I can tell is that there is a drain screw that's supposed to be facing out. So someone probably pulled the bowl and put it back on facing the wrong way. So I'm just going to loosen the bowl. This bowl, it does not look great. Carburetor on the bottom definitely has some junk on it, but the float looks pretty clean, so the fuel level was not to the top. So this carburetor might actually come back once I clean it up. So I will try to rebuild it, and if that doesn't work, then I'll put one of the extra ones onto it. In case you're wondering, the main jet actually looks clear. I don't see anything wrong with the carb other than it's dirty, but the main jet's clear. Pilot jet is stuck, but might be clear. The needle looks okay. I wouldn't say it's Actually, no, it looks good. So this carb, the way it is, should work. I just don't know how well until I try. Also, the engine side gasket, I was not able to save that, so I will have to put a new one on. Okay, so the carb's out of the ultrasonic. It's all rinsed off and dried. It didn't come out as good as I was hoping. I think it would actually still power the generator, but I don't feel good about putting this on a generator. I did look online, and there are third-party aftermarket carburetors available for like 18 bucks, which I'm sure have got to be better than this. The biggest problem here is the pilot jet. It is stuck. It will not come out. There's a lot of corrosion around the brass fitting of the pilot jet into the body. And I have a feeling that corrosion probably goes down and is clogging some holes up. So I don't think it's really worth my time to put this on the generator. In addition to that, there's rust. The bowl screw is pretty rusty. And this screw, goes through the bowl and right kind of into the bottom of the emulsion tube area. So any additional rust that forms, when it breaks off, it's going to go up the emulsion tube and either get stuck there, clogging up some holes, or it's just going to advance into the engine and the combustion area, and you really don't want rust in there. The other thing is that, the bowl isn't in great shape. It is starting to rust. There's a lot of material left, so it probably does have a few years left in it. So this isn't as big of an issue. And then this, I actually want to Google it. It wasn't clogged, and I used my wire drill set to kind of gauge the hole size, and it's supposed to be around 0.78, 0.79, and this one came in at about 0.91 or 0.92. So I don't know if this generator just requires a bigger jet than the other ones I've worked on, or if someone went in there with something and opened it up either accidentally or on purpose. So I am gonna just double check that against this model number on the engine to see if this is in fact the correct size. If it is, then I'll reuse it on a different carb. So I do have two carbs, OEM carbs, that are rebuilt, almost pristine condition. This one is going to become a parts carburetor. There's not many parts on it that I would ever use, but the float is still good, the needle's good, and there are other various things on here that could probably be used in a pinch. But I don't think this one's worth saving or rebuilding, I should say. So with that said, I'm going to pull out the one that is already ready to go and bolt it on. And before I do that, there's a little bit of gasket material left on the intake manifold. So I will carefully remove that with a razor blade and then put the new rebuilt carb on, and then just put the gas tank on, do the fuel lines, and test the generator. Okay, so this is the carburetor I'm using. It actually was missing the seal on the bowl nut, so I was able to take that from the carburetor that originally came on this machine. And I also forgot I needed a gasket. I thought I had one. I know I bought one, can't find it, so had to resort to making a template. And for that, it's literally, you need a crayon and a piece of paper. And you put it right on and take the crayon sideways and just rub it to get the details of what needs to be cut out of the paper. Cut it out. These are all the tools you need and some paper, and this is the end result. So not bad. It'll definitely do the job. You know, the good thing about this is you don't have to wait. You know, if you order a gasket, it's going to take 2 or 3 days at least, and it's going to cost $5 for this gasket. For this, it was probably $5 for this roll, and I can make 20 or 30 or 40 gaskets in one roll. So this probably cost me 25 cents and about 20 minutes of time. So enough about that. Let's get this thing installed. Okay, I forgot to mention too, I did look up the main jet size, and it is 0.925. So the jet that came on the original carburetor on this was not enlarged or anything, and I double checked the jet size here, and it is also the same size on this carburetor that I put in. So this is all ready to go. I confirmed the linkage is, there's no obstructions. The governor seems fine. No obstructions on the choke. I'm going to leave this off for now until I get the fuel tank and fuel line installed, and then I'll put this on as the last step, and we'll be good. Okay, I noticed one thing here. Very important difference between a Homelite and a Husky. Over there is my Husky. Here's the Homelite. They look the same. And I know the difference, the only difference was the fuel tank, metal versus plastic. The Homelite originally came with metal, and because this tank was bad, I'm putting the Husky plastic tank onto it, and it fits perfectly. But because it's plastic, there needs to be a heat shield around the muffler to keep the heat from melting the plastic tank. And when I looked on, you know, some of my videos at the Husky ones that I've fixed in the past, they all have that heat shield going around in and back. This one doesn't. So that's a potentially very dangerous situation with a plastic tank. So I took a look online, and the heat shields are available. They're like $15, so I already ordered it. It's on its way. We can still test it, but we won't be able to run it for a long period of time without risking, I guess, damaging the tank. And of course, you burn a hole through the tank right above the muffler, you're gonna have a big fire on your hands. So anyway, if you're thinking of doing something like this, make sure you get the heat shield, especially with a plastic tank. Okay. It's definitely ready to go. I'm going to put a little bit of gas in it right now, just to make sure there's no leaks in the carburetor. And then we can go out and see if it starts, runs good, and makes some power. No leaks. All right, guys, welcome back. The cold here is wreaking havoc on my phone battery, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to record this whole thing, but if you remember, I have no heat shield, so I cannot run it for long. I've got everything plugged in, ready to go. I got a blow dryer on one 120 leg and a space heater on another, and a light and the kilowatt meter. I'm just going to check the voltage and the hertz, make sure that they're reasonable. I don't want to run this for more than a couple minutes. If I have time, I might adjust the throttle now if it needs adjustment. Otherwise, I'll just wait till the plate comes, the heat shield. For now, I'm just making sure that it runs good and makes power. So let's give it a try. Okay, so it starts, runs pretty well, makes plenty of power. I put 3,000 watts on it, no problem. The engine speed was a little slow, so I did adjust it. And it looks like someone was in here before, because there's the adjustment screw there, and there's a nut that's supposed to be tightened up against this plate to keep the screw from moving. And as you can see, it's not. I did not do that. That's just how it was. So I'll tighten that nut against there to keep the screw from spinning. You know, aside from that, you know, it did have the that hunting issue when there's no load on it. And if I choke it a little, it goes away. So it tells me it is running lean when there's no load. That is a typical problem with these. I do have another video where I increased the diameter of the pilot jet. So I might do that on this just to kind of minimize that hunting. But it's perfect. It runs fine. So, you know, there's the one last thing I need to worry about, which is the heat shield for the muffler. That should be in next week. I probably will not show you that on this video. There's really not much to it. The shield just wraps around the left side of the muffler, around the top, and goes along the back over to the engine, you know, kind of directing the heat away from the fuel tank and, you know, making it safer to run. Anyway, I think that's about it for this. So thanks again. See you next time.